Dorms, they're supposed to be full of life, right? Laughter echoing down the halls, doors slamming shut, music leaking through the walls. A place buzzing with energy, new friendships, late-night study sessions. But the thing about dorms is, when the lights go out, they change. And that's when you start to realize, maybe you're not as alone as you think. Some dorms hold more than just students. Some halls echo with footsteps that don't belong to anyone walking. Some rooms never stay empty, no matter how many times they're reassigned. And tonight, I want to take you inside those stories. We'll talk about a freshman who discovered their roommate never even checked in, but still somehow lived there. We'll explore a dorm hall where whispers traveled from door to door, though no one would ever admit to speaking. And then there's the locked room, the one that maintenance pretends doesn't exist. The one that, if you pass by too late at night, you'll swear you hear someone on the other side. So before we dive in, take a second, make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you don't want to miss the horrors I have lined up for you next. Hit that like button if you're brave enough to keep listening, and maybe, just maybe, keep the lights on while you do. Because these are creepy college dorm horror stories that will make you think twice before falling asleep in your own room tonight. Moving into a college dorm is supposed to be exciting. It's that first real taste of independence. Decorating your side of the room, meeting your roommate, maybe even staying up late swapping stories about high school crushes or future plans. That's what Evan expected when he dragged his suitcases into room 214 on his first day of freshman year. When he walked in, half the room was already taken. Books stacked neatly on the desk, clothes folded in the dresser, a bed half-made, like someone had left in a rush and planned to come back. Evan thought nothing of it. Cool. My roommate beat me here, he said aloud, more to break the silence than anything else. He unpacked his stuff, set up his laptop, and waited to meet the person he'd be living with for the next year. Except he didn't. Not really. That night, while Evan was typing away at his computer, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. His roommate was sitting at the desk across the room, head bent over a notebook. Evan blinked, startled. He hadn't even heard the door open. "Hey man, I'm Evan," he said, spinning his chair slightly. The roommate didn't look up, just gave a small nod and kept scribbling. Awkward, but fine. Maybe he was shy. Over the next few days, Evan noticed something strange. His roommate was always there. At the desk, in the bed, sometimes standing at the window late at night. Always quiet, always watching something unseen. Evan tried again. "So, what's your major?" "Nothing." A faint whisper that might have been a word, but too soft to catch. One night, Evan even offered pizza. He set a slice on the desk beside him. By morning, the slice was untouched, but the plate was empty. Evan told himself maybe the guy was just antisocial, a loner. College had all kinds of people, right? But still, it gnawed at him. This roommate never seemed to leave. Never grabbed food from the dining hall. Never showered in the communal bathroom. Weeks passed. Evan's friends started to joke about it. "You sure you're not living with a ghost, man?" Evan laughed, but it didn't feel like a joke. One evening, he bumped into the resident assistant, Mark, in the hall. They made small talk and Evan casually brought it up. "My roommate's kinda weird. Never talks, never leaves. Guess he's just one of those shut-in types." Mark stopped mid-step. His face went pale. "Roommate?" "Yeah, the guy in 214. Mark frowned, shaking his head. "Evan, 214 is a single. It's been a single for years." Evan froze. "No, seriously. His stuff is all over the room." Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're the only person assigned there." That night, Evan sat on his bed staring at the other side of the room. The desk was cluttered with books. The bed had a deep indentation, as if someone had just gotten up. His heart pounded as he whispered, "Who are you?" For the first time, the roommate turned his head. Just slightly, enough for Evan to see a pale, hollow face. Then the lights flickered and he was gone. Evan bolted into the hall, knocking on doors, desperate for someone else to see what he saw. By the time he returned with Mark, the room was empty. No books, no clothes, no bedspread, just dust coating the untouched mattress. Mark looked at him with something between pity and fear. "You should probably get some rest," he muttered. But Evan could tell he was shaken too. From that night on, Evan slept with the lights on. Because every so often, when he was drifting off, he swore he felt the mattress across from him shift, like someone had just laid down again. And hey, if you're still listening and your lights are off, maybe turn them back on. Seriously. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next story, it's gonna crawl under your skin even worse than this one. Old dorms have a certain heaviness to them. The paint chips, the pipes rattle, and the walls always seem too thin, like they've soaked up every laugh, every fight, every cry from the decades of students who've lived there. That's what Marissa thought when she moved into her campus's oldest dorm, a 4-story brick building that everyone called the Hollow. It was supposed to be full of charm, but late at night, charm was the last thing it felt like. The first time she heard the whispers, she was brushing her teeth, just faint murmurs echoing down the hallway. She assumed it was some kids talking, maybe pulling an all-nighter, but when she poked her head out, the hall was empty. The whispers kept coming. Every night, always after midnight, always low, urgent, like someone huddled just out of sight. Her roommate, Kayla, noticed it too. "It's weird," she whispered one night. "It sounds like it's right outside the door." The longer they lived there, the worse it got. Doors rattled, like someone was testing the knobs. Sometimes the whispers would crawl from one end of the hall to the other, circling the entire floor. The girls on the floor started making jokes about it. "Oh, the Hollow's haunted," they'd say, nervously laughing. But no one ever dared stand in the hallway when the whispers started. No one wanted to see who or what was making them. Marissa, though, she couldn't shake the curiosity. She needed answers. One night, she decided to stay awake. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting. 2 a.m. The whispers began. Faint at first, then growing louder, urgent, like a conversation that was never meant for human ears. 2:30. The sound traveled closer, weaving up and down the hall. 2:50. Doors rattled. Something brushed against the bottom of hers. 3:12 a.m. exactly. The whispers stopped, right outside her door. Her heart thudded in her chest. Slowly, carefully, she got out of bed and pressed her eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty, and yet, she could still hear them, whispering. Not outside, inside. Her blood ran cold as the sound curled around her ears. She turned, scanning the room. Kayla was asleep, or at least she was, until she bolted upright with a scream. "There's someone," Kayla gasped, pointing to the side of her bed. "There's someone crouching there." Marissa flicked on the light. Nothing, just shadows pooling in the corners. But the whispers didn't fade. They slipped under the walls, around the furniture, curling into the air itself. That was the last straw. The next morning, they went straight to their RA. They spilled everything. Every whisper. Every door rattle. Every sleepless night. The RA listened quietly, then let out a long sigh. "I was hoping none of you would notice." "Notice what?" Kayla asked. The RA leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Years ago, a student on this floor took his own life. His roommate, he was the one who found him, said he heard whispers for hours, but thought it was just his imagination. When he finally opened the door, it was too late." Marissa felt her stomach twist. "And now, the RA said, his eyes heavy. "The hall hasn't been quiet since." That night, Marissa and Kayla tried to sleep with earbuds in, music blasting, anything to drown out the whispers. But at 3:12 a.m., the rattling started again. Louder, angrier, like the whispers knew they'd told. And to this day, neither of them will admit what they saw when they glanced at the peephole again. Because this time, it wasn't empty. Still listening. You're braver than most. And trust me, it only gets darker from here. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe because the next story, it'll make you think twice about every locked door you pass in a dorm hallway. Every dorm has that one door. The one nobody talks about, but everyone notices. For Dylan, that door was at the very end of his hallway in McCarthy Hall. A heavy wooden door with no nameplate, no student ID scanner, no sign, just a tarnished knob and a padlock that looked older than the building itself. Most people joked about it. Storage closet, some said. Others whispered darker rumors. That's the suicide room, one senior muttered during move-in week. They sealed it up years ago after a kid didn't make it. Dylan laughed it off. College kids loved their ghost stories. But every time he passed that door, he felt it, like eyes following him down the hall. For weeks, nothing happened. The door just sat there, silent, collecting dust. Until one night in October when the storm hit. The power went out across campus. The dorm halls plunged into darkness. Students were lighting up their phones, some running down the stairs to gather in the lobby. Dylan was fumbling with his flashlight app when he froze. A sound, bang, came from the locked door. At first, he thought it was just the storm rattling something loose. But then, bang, bang, bang. 3 heavy thuds, deliberate, like fists slamming against the wood. Dylan's light flickered across the bottom of the door. That's when he saw it. Light seeping out from underneath. Warm, yellow, steady, like a lamp had just been switched on. The whispers followed. Faint, slithering voices that grew clearer the longer he listened. They weren't random. They were saying something. They were saying his name. Dylan. His blood ran cold. He stumbled back, but before he could move further, the doorknob rattled violently. The padlock clanged against the wood as if someone was trying to break through. He turned and bolted down the hall, nearly tripping over himself. By the time he reached the stairwell, the power snapped back on. The lights hummed, the hallway buzzed with chatter, and when he glanced back, the door was dark, silent, still. The next morning, Dylan couldn't let it go. He cornered one of the maintenance guys in the lobby. "Hey," Dylan said, trying to sound casual. "That locked room at the end of the hall. What's in there?" The man's face tightened. He shook his head. "There's no wiring in that room. No lights. No power at all." "But," Dylan pressed, "I saw it lit up last night. I heard." He stopped himself. The maintenance man's voice dropped. "That door's been sealed for over 20 years. Nobody goes in. Nobody comes out." Dylan wanted to argue, but the man walked off, muttering something under his breath that Dylan swore sounded like, "Should have stayed that way." That evening, Dylan tried convincing himself it was just stress, his imagination filling the silence. But curiosity gnawed at him. He needed proof, so he pulled up the photos on his phone. During the outage, he'd snapped a few shots of the glowing door, thinking it would make a cool, spooky dorm post for social media. He swiped through them, blurry, grainy shots of the hallway, the faint glow under the door. Then he froze. In the last photo, the light was brightest, and in the reflection of the glass picture frame mounted on the wall across from the door, a face, pale, sunken, eyes wide and unblinking, staring directly into the camera. Dylan dropped his phone. His heart hammered in his chest, because when he bent down to pick it up, the frame on the wall, right there in the photo, was cracked. A fresh crack that hadn't been there the day before. That night, he stuffed a towel under his door and cranked his music as loud as he could. But still, around midnight, he swore he heard it. Bang, bang, bang. And underneath it all, soft and patient, the whisper of his name. If your dorm has a locked door at the end of the hallway, maybe don't get too curious. And if you're still watching, you're braver than most. Hit subscribe because the next story will take you even deeper into the shadows of college life. The kind of shadows you can't escape. If you've ever lived in a dorm, you know the basement is the creepiest part of the whole building. Cold concrete, buzzing lights that flicker more often than they should, and the hum of old machines that sound way too alive in the silence of the night. For Lena, that basement was where the laundry room was tucked away. She hated going down there, but with a pile of clothes she couldn't put off any longer, she decided one night to just get it over with. It was nearly midnight, but she figured better alone than battling over dryers during the day. The basement was colder than usual, the kind of cold that sinks into your skin. Lena shoved her clothes into a washer, dropped in her quarters, and leaned against the wall scrolling through her phone. That's when she heard it. A ring. Not the sharp tone of a cell phone, but the hollow, metallic ring of an old payphone. Lena frowned. At the far corner of the basement stood a dusty payphone bolted to the wall. One she had never seen anyone use. Who even knew it still worked? The ringing didn't stop. It echoed off the walls, bouncing around the concrete room until it felt like it was coming from everywhere. Against her better judgment, Lena stepped closer. One more ring. Then she picked it up. Hello. First just static. Then soft, strained. Like the words were dragging themselves through water. Don't go back upstairs. It's waiting. Lena's chest tightened. What? Who is this? The line went dead. Her breath quickened. She slammed the receiver down and bolted toward the stairwell, clutching her phone like it could protect her. Her footsteps pounded on the concrete stairs as she climbed, but halfway up, she froze. Footsteps. Behind her, someone else was coming down the stairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Hello, she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. She turned, shining her phone's flashlight down the stairwell. Empty. The stairs stretched into darkness, silent except for the echo of her own breathing. Her heart hammered as she turned and sprinted the rest of the way up, bursting into the first-floor hallway. The warm light of the dorm hit her like air after drowning. She didn't stop until she was back in her room, door locked, lights on. The next morning, Lena tried to laugh it off. Maybe someone was messing with her. Maybe it was a prank call or her tired brain playing tricks. She dragged one of her friends downstairs to prove it. But when they reached the far corner of the basement, her blood ran cold. The wall was bare. No phone. No wires. Nothing. Her friend frowned. What are you talking about, Lena? There hasn't been a payphone down here for years. Lena didn't argue. She didn't even do laundry at night anymore. But sometimes, lying in bed, she swore she could still hear it. That hollow, metallic ring echoing from somewhere deep beneath the dorm. Creepy, right? And if you're still here, you've got nerves of steel. But trust me, we're not done yet. Make sure you're subscribed because the outro is going to tie all of these dorm nightmares together. And you'll never walk a college hallway the same way again. Dorms are supposed to be the start of something new, late-night study sessions, new friendships, and that first taste of freedom. But when the lights go out, when the halls grow too quiet, you realize something else. Dorms don't just house the living. They hold on to memories. And sometimes, to the things that were never supposed to stay. We've seen it tonight. The roommate who never truly existed. The whispers that kept crawling out of the vents. The door that should never have been opened. And the warning phone call from a place that shouldn't even speak. Each story is different, but the theme is the same. Dorm walls don't forget. Students come and go, but what lingers behind doesn't always leave with them. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it watches, and sometimes it finds new company. What makes dorm horror so chilling is the familiarity. These aren't isolated cabins in the woods or cursed hotels on the edge of town. They're places where thousands of people live every year, ordinary students just like you. They're supposed to be safe, filled with laughter and noise. But that's exactly what makes the silence at night so unbearable. Because when you finally hear that extra footstep, or that knock on your door long after midnight, you know it isn't supposed to be there. Maybe that's the lesson. In college, you don't just learn from professors or books. You learn from the shadows, from the locked rooms, from the things that whisper when they think you're asleep. And some lessons, once learned, can't be unlearned. So the next time you're lying in your dorm bed and you hear footsteps in the hallway long after everyone's asleep, or notice a door that always stays locked, don't be curious. Don't ask questions. In college, some lessons you really don't want to learn. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a creepy dorm experience? A strange sound? An odd figure? Something you still can't explain? Share your story in the comments. I might feature it in a future video. After all, the scariest dorm stories aren't the ones we tell. They're the ones that actually happened.